Welcome back to the Bad Influence Podcast, Relationship Wednesday, where we show you how to have honest conversations in your relationship. I'm the bad influence that you need in your life, Bjordan Banderas. How many times have you bit your tongue, held back, or kept your thoughts to yourself because you didn't want to rock the boat in your relationship? That's a good question, right? But I have another one. How many times have you swept things under the rug, convinced yourself it was no big deal, or just kept quiet to avoid an argument? We've all done it, right? I've done it, you've done it, or at one point in your life you're going to do it. But what if I told you that by avoiding these difficult conversations, you're not just avoiding arguments, you're avoiding growth, connection, and a better relationship? Today's episode is all about the uncomfortable truth. That silence kills relationships. It's not always the big fights or betrayals that end things. No. Sometimes it's the little things that are left unsaid that chip away at what you have. So, if you feel that distance is creeping in, if there is a wall between you and your partner that wasn't there before, or if there's resentment building up under the surface, this one is for you. We're going to dive into the importance of open, vulnerable communication, how to start having those conversations that scare you, and why breaking the silence might just be the thing that saves your relationship, just like it saved mine. Because trust me, the alternative, holding it all in, pretending everything's fine, that only leads to one place and one place only: resentment and disconnection. So if you're ready to get real about what's bugging you, if you want to build a relationship that's rock solid instead of fragile, then buckle up. Let's start by asking the big question. Why do we avoid honest conversations? For most of us, it's fear. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear that our partner won't understand us. We're scared that if we really open up, lay it all out, our partner might get defensive or worse, walk away. So we stay quiet, hoping the problem will magically disappear or that our partner will just figure it out. Spoiler alert, that never happens. It's easy to think that keeping the peace is the better option, but it is not. But here's the thing. We convince ourselves that staying silent is a form of kindness, that we're doing our partner a favor by not stirring the pot. But in reality, we're only doing harm. Avoiding honest conversations is like putting a band-aid on a deep wound. It might cover it up for now, but underneath, that wound still is festering. And here's the thing. The more we avoid, the more that resentment builds up. Those unsaid words don't just disappear. They sit there, growing, hardening, turning bitterness that's hard to shake off. And before we know it, the person we're supposed to love and trust the most feels like a stranger. I've seen it in a lot of relationships. And here's the truth. If you're constantly avoiding the real conversations, you're not protecting your relationship. You're slowly suffocating it. So let's dig into what it takes to stop that cycle. And again, I've been there. Trust me, it was hard to get over this. There was a time in my own relationship where I thought that being quiet was the best way to keep things smooth. I'd feel frustrated, disappointed, sometimes even hurt, but I'd hold back thinking, oh, it's not worth bringing it up. It is not, so I'll just get over it. But here's what happened. It didn't go away. It just sat there. like a weight on my chest day after day. It was pissing me off. Eventually, I started getting distant. I wasn't engaged in conversations. I didn't feel that same excitement to spend time together. And when I finally stopped and asked myself why, the answer hit me like a ton of bricks. I had all this resentment built up that I never dealt with. I was mad, frustrated, hurt, but my wife had no clue because I never shared any of it. One day, I decided I couldn't keep living like that. I sat down, took a deep breath, and told my wife everything I'd been holding back. Was it easy? Fuck no. It was awkward, uncomfortable, and I was terrified of how it would go. But you know what? That conversation was a turning point. It broke down the walls I didn't even realize I'd built. And it opened up a level of understanding and closeness that I didn't know was possible. I never had anything like that. I never had a relationship like that. That's why I'm telling you this today. Because I've seen what happens when you finally open up. And I've seen what happens when you don't. So let's talk about how to get started. So why are these conversations so damn important? Because honesty is the foundation of trust. When you're not open with your partner, you're essentially building your relationship on half-truths, assumptions, and misunderstandings. And that's not love, that's survival. Real love, real connection happens when you're fully seen, heard, and accepted for who you are. Honest conversations are about more than just sharing complaints or issues. They're about creating a safe space where both of you can be vulnerable without fear of judgment, which I honestly believe it's extremely important to have something like this in any relationship. They're about knowing that even if you disagree, even if things get heated, your relationship is strong enough to handle it. It's like this. If you can't talk about the little things, how are you supposed to tackle the big ones? Life throws curveballs at you, challenges, losses, and hard decisions. And if you haven't built that foundation of honesty and trust, those big challenges can knock your relationship down in a heartbeat. Honest communication isn't just a nice to have, it's a necessity in any relationship. It's part of the glue that holds everything else together. So if you're serious about building something that lasts, start with being real. Now, let's talk about what happens when you don't speak up. Because there are so many things that happen when you don't do this. When you keep everything bottled up, it doesn't just disappear. It creates an emotional distance. You start feeling like your partner doesn't get you, even though they're not getting the chance because you're not sharing anything. They don't understand you because you don't give them the chance. And eventually, you become more like roommates than partners. You say hi to each other. You guys sleep in the same bed, but you want to be in the next room. You go through the motions, but that deep connection, that excitement, it fades. And sometimes it happens within weeks of the relationship, months, and sometimes even years, which makes it even harder to figure out what exactly happened. But it happens. And here's the irony. You're doing it to protect the relationship, but it's the very thing that's destroying it. And what's even worse, bottling things up can lead to explosions. It's like a pressure cooker. Eventually, You can't hold it in anymore and it all comes out at once. I've done it. I've seen people do it in public. I've seen people do it on social media. So everybody does this at one point in their life or during the relationship. So instead of a calm conversation, it turns into an argument, a fight, a blame game. And then it's not just about the issue itself. It's about all the hurt and frustration you've been holding in. Breaking that cycle means start with laying it out, little by little. So let's talk about how to start having those honest, open conversations. You ready to have these conversations? But maybe you don't know how to start, which it happens. We're not taught how to do this. But here's a simple rule. This is something that I follow that has helped me. It has helped my wife and some of my friends, and it can help you too. Don't wait for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment. Just find a time when you're both calm, open, and willing to listen. Start with I statements. Instead of saying, you always do this. Try saying, I feel this way when this happens. It takes the blame out of the equation and focuses on your emotions, your feelings. It opens the door for understanding rather than defensiveness. And be prepared to listen as much as you speak. Conversations are not just about airing your thoughts. No, they're about hearing your partner's perspective too. When they share, resist the urge to interrupt or defend yourself. Just listen. Just listen. Just shut up, or like I tell sometimes people, just shut the fuck up and listen. Sometimes just being heard is enough to bring down walls. Difficult conversations don't have to be fights. They can be opportunities for growth, which they can. Me and my wife have turned up many of our fights into opportunities for growth because we learn from them. So take that first step and don't let fear hold you back. If you want honest communication to become a part of your relationship, you've got to make it a habit. And like always, I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to show you. So here are some tools to keep that door open. First, check-ins. I know a lot of couples don't like to do this because they live together, so they should be able to see how the other partner is doing. But we don't really pay attention to that. We're human. We make a lot of errors. So every week or so, take a few minutes to ask each other, how are we doing? Is there anything we need to talk about? This keeps small issues from turning into big problems later in the future. Second, set some ground rules. Agree that honesty doesn't mean harshness. You can be open without being hurtful. Yes, you can. I know some people don't understand that for some reason, but yes, you can. Set boundaries on what's okay and what's not so that you both feel safe. Third, create a judgment-free zone. Let your partner know that they can tell you anything, no matter how small or embarrassing, without fear of ridicule. That brings down the walls so much easier and faster. And you do the same for them. So it's literally a two-way street. I do this for you or for the relationship. You do it for me and for the relationship. And it works great, in my opinion, because this builds a culture of trust where both of you feel safe being vulnerable. Communication isn't just about talking. It's about creating an environment where talking is safe, welcome, and even healing. Now, let's talk about vulnerability a little bit. I know it's uncomfortable, maybe even scary. It can turn a grown-ass man into a little kid that acts like a little bitch sometimes. But here's the thing. Vulnerability is where real intimacy happens. When you share the parts of yourself that you're scared to show, when you let someone see the real you, flaws and all, that's where deep connection is born. Vulnerability isn't weakness. And fuck whoever has said that, because it's not. It worked great for me. So it's not a vulnerability for me. It's a strength. That's what has allowed me to be married for 10 years, go through fucking hell with my wife when she got sick, and come out on top. It's saying, I trust you enough to be real with you, and that's the foundation of any great relationship. When you're vulnerable, you're giving your partner the chance to know you on a real, deeper level. And here's what's amazing. When you're vulnerable, it often invites your partner to do the same. Oh, yes. It creates a cycle of openness, understanding, and empathy that brings you closer together. Relationships built on vulnerability don't break easily. They bend, they adapt, they grow. And that's what we're aiming for. Something real, something lasting. So here's the bottom line. Honest conversations are hard, but they're necessary. The silence, the holding back, the unspoken expectations, those are the things that break relationships, not the conversations you're afraid to have. My challenge to you today is to start with one conversation. Bring up that one thing you've been avoiding. Open the door to understanding and watch how it transforms your relationship. It might be awkward, it might be uncomfortable, but it's worth it. Because when you're real with each other, you're giving yourselves the chance to build something that lasts. And that's what we should be aiming for in life. That's what we should be aiming for in a relationship, especially if we're going to marry the person that we're having the issues with, right? If we're going to spend, or at least we think that we're going to spend the rest of our lives with this particular person, don't you want to build something that lasts? Something that's unbreakable? Something that has a bond that people are going to be jealous of? Maybe you don't want the jealousy. I didn't want the jealousy, it just came with it. But this is something that I believe everyone should have in their relationships. A relationship like that. Because the relationships that have this and that have done this are some of the strongest relationships that I have seen, mine included. So you have to ask yourself, what do you want in your relationship? And based on what you want, you might have to take these steps that I talked about today. Because without doing this, your relationship might not last like you want it to. And then in the end, you and the other person are going to feel like you guys wasted your time, your energy, and then you guys are going to be mad. And obviously we don't want that, because there's a lot of that out there. So let's fucking change that. And that's it for today. Thank you for tuning into the Bad Influence podcast. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't let silence and fear hold you back from a relationship that's truly fulfilling, because it feels amazing. So, until next time, break the silence, embrace honesty, and keep building a relationship that's as real as it gets. Remember, love isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about facing it together with honesty and respect. So go out there, start those conversations, and make your relationship stronger than ever. And have a great day.